You are listening to the Everything Ham Radio podcast, episode number 26. Today we're going to be talking about youth in amateur radio, and a little later we're going to be talking about the Harvard Wireless Club in our Amateur Radio Club Spotlight. So, stay tuned. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. This podcast is released every Tuesday morning. You can find all the links that we might be talking about, as well as additional information about this episode in the show notes at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/26. That's the number 26. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio, or follow me on Twitter at K5CLM. So today we have a little something special that we haven't had before. We actually have a special guest that we're going to be talking to. His name is Douglas Maggs. Call sign is Kilo Kilo 4 Uniform Hotel Kilo. He is the student president of the Harvard Wireless Club that we're going to be highlighting in our Amateur Radio Club Spotlight a little later. However, he is here to talk about our topic of the day, which is youth in amateur radio. So, let's go on to the interview, shall we? Hey everybody, this is Curtis with the Everything Ham Radio podcast, and today we have a special guest with us, Douglas Maggs. His call sign is Kilo Kilo 4 Uniform Hotel Kilo. So, Doug, how about you say hello to everybody, introduce yourself, and tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, Curtis. Thanks very much for having me on the program today. Yes, as Curtis mentioned, my call sign is KK4UHK. That's because my hometown is Arlington, Virginia, but the main subject matter of today's talk with Curtis is not actually going to be about anything in Foreland, but rather up in New England, where I am the president of the Harvard Wireless Club, W1AF. I finished my junior year of college at Harvard this past spring. I will be entering my senior year of college, as well as my third year in the position of the presidency of the Wireless Club, and I'm very excited to tell everyone a little bit about my experience working in and as a part of the Wireless Club, and also as a relatively young person who is only a couple years into the wonderful hobby that is ham radio. So thanks again for having me, Curtis.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. So first off, let me get this out. You know, like you said, the topic of today is youth in amateur radio. So how old actually are you?
I'm 21.
21. Oh, wow. How I remember those days. So you said you're a senior in Harvard. What are you majoring in there?
So I actually study classics and history, which some people might find a little bit surprising, seeing as I'm very interested in ham radio as well. But What I would say to you or just anybody else is that ham radio is a great hobby for just about anybody to enjoy. And while my academic pursuits take me down the ancient history path, I'm specifically interested in ancient Roman provincial administration. I've had a long time interest in various technical pursuits, just as hobbies, and so I find that when my hobbies are a little bit different from my academics, it just means that I end up doing more varied, more different things, which is an exciting way to keep myself busy and engaged.
Wow, yeah, I would have never guessed that you would be that major. You know, I was expecting, something like engineering or radio broadcasting or something, but that's just like way off in left field. And that really goes to show you what, the broad spectrum of what we as hams have. You could be a lawyer or a doctor or a rocket scientist or whatever, all the way down to just a general laborer or a Taco Bell worker or whatever. This hobby is great when it comes to bringing everybody together in one common place.
Oh, absolutely. It unites you with so many fascinating people, And it really is great that it's a shared interest and there's a shared knowledge base that everyone has. Obviously, you have to get licensed, you have to take the test and, pass the FCC requirements. But beyond that basic set of, rules and regulations that we all know pretty well, everybody brings something a little bit different to the table. And I think that's one of the reasons that ham radio is so interesting, and one of the reasons that I was able to get so hooked on it so quickly, if you will, was that I realized that being a part of it was an opportunity to meet a lot of different and really interesting people that I would almost certainly not have contact with otherwise.
Oh yes, absolutely. So, I didn't even look up the Foreland, and after 20 some odd years, you'd think I would know where Foreland is. But were you licensed before you went to school, or did this happen afterwards?
No. So my first exposure to ham radio was probably about 8 years ago. So I'm an Eagle Scout. I went all the way through the Boy Scout program. And during one camporee, which, a weekend-long camping event, there was a demonstration by a ham radio operator. And I don't remember, this was a long time ago, but I don't remember the gentleman's call sign or anything. But I do remember finding it really cool, the idea that he had these radios mounted in the back of his Jeep that could enable him to talk to people all over the world. And so I knew a little bit about ham radio before I went off to college, but I actually became licensed in October of 2013, which was right as I was beginning my freshman year of college. I was going to an activities fair where various undergraduate organizations at Harvard had tables to display sort of who they were and what they did, and I met some fantastic people who were running and participating in the wireless club, and I put my name on the email list, and it went from there. They set me up with all the testing manuals and everything I would need to study up, and they set me up with a testing session, and I was a technician within a month of when I first met people. So it wasn't my very first exposure to ham radio. I did have sort of that first exposure several years back, but I've only been licensed for a little less than 3 years.
Okay. Well, I got a little message saying there was a problem with my internet connection, so I don't know if I'm going to get that last thing. So tell us again, you've had your license for how long?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had my license for just under 3 years. I was first licensed in October of 2013. It was kind of a funny time to get licensed. A little fun fact, I took my test for technician class on October 1st, and the next day the federal government shut down for 2 weeks during that whole budget issue. And so I think I can claim the dubious credit of having one of the longest processing times from the FCC of just about any ham you'll talk to.
So it was your fault that they did that. Okay.
Yeah, I think I might have had something to do with that. It was sort of a perfect storm of timing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I would go so far as to saying that it took you the longest, because it took me about probably 2.5, 3 weeks or so when I got my license, and I'm sure there's other people that are listening here that was even longer, because I don't know if you know this or not, but back 25, 30 years ago, I think, before really the ARRL took over the VEC and W5YI and some of these other smaller VECs, the FCC actually came to a city, and you had to go up to that city to take a test directly from the FCC. And it was like once a month when they came. So if you missed it, you had to wait whole another month. And then they had to, take it back all the way back there. It was either snail mail or they had to drive it back or whatnot. We didn't have this emailing and electronic filing and stuff like that. So, things have really come along in a short amount of time that I've been a ham.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you're right about that. It really is fantastic to see ham radio getting paired with modern technology. The fact that, I still filled out a Scantron sheet, bubbled in my answers, but once everything was submitted, successfully and the, VE testers had said that I passed and everything, the FCC did everything online. I did get a paper license. I was I think it was the last year that they still sent out the paper licenses. But it is true that the fact that you were able to just connect everything online made it a world easier. And I think that that's a great thing, that ham radio can remain the wonderful hobby that it's been for over 100 years, but at the same time we can also use modern technology to rope people in and make it more fun and more user-friendly.
Right, absolutely. And the the other thing that is really nice about amateur radio, especially, getting into it when you're young, is, a lot of the technology that we get now comes from ham radio. It's, the wireless transceiver and stuff, it started with an amateur radio for the most part. So there's really a lot of interesting history when it comes to amateur radio, and that's where your major ties in.
Yes, absolutely. I think that it's rather fitting that in addition to being the president of our wireless club, I've also become somewhat the de facto historian, you could say, too. I love reading about the history and learning anything I can about what went on, who was part of this club, who did things in it before us. So I've had a lot of fun, and I've learned some really pretty cool things about the wireless club, and if we have them, and I'd love to tell you a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. That really does sound great. But Les, why don't we wait and save that a little bit more towards the end in our spotlight? We can talk more about the club itself. I'd like to kind of switch gears here a little bit and talk about kind of the youth in amateur radio.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good to me.
So, as a young person, you're 21 now, so you got licensed at what, 19 or so?
Yes, I think I was 18 actually. I just recently celebrated a birthday, so I was actually 18 when I got licensed.
Awesome. So, as a young person, what do you think is probably the biggest draw to bring young people in like yourself?
Fundamentally, I think that the coolest thing about ham radio is the chance to tinker with some electronics that, you probably have never looked at before, and the thrill that you get when you successfully figure something new out. When, the first time you pull out a new radio and set it up and connect it to your antenna and you actually hear somebody, or the first time that you successfully make a contact in a contest. I think the thing that is really exciting and really special is showing ham radio, the hobby, in action. And it's fun and it's fantastic to read about the hobby and to hear people talk about the hobby. Those are fantastic things. But I think that the thing that really, really got me excited was that when I was at this activities fair, they had a radio set up. And it was just, a relatively small mobile station with a buddy pole attached to it. So it wasn't anything too fancy. But there was a radio there, and they had a pair of headphones that I could put on and immediately feel like I was immersed in the hobby. I wasn't licensed, so I couldn't transmit anything, but I could listen to other people transmitting. And I think that immediately becoming a part of the hobby and feeling like I was part of the action was what made it really exciting. And I think that is really crucial to getting new people involved, is to really involve them from the very first moment.
Right, yeah. It definitely hit the ground running, I think, is probably the biggest thing that I always say, because I was licensed when I was 16. And the reason that I got into it was for the community service aspect of it. My father and I got our license the same day, and the reason that we did was because we started a ham club for our church disaster relief, who the month before had a major flood in Houston, and had spent like $2,000 in that 1 month on cell phone bills. And this is back in like 93, 94, where it was a big old bag cell phones and stuff like that. So, we started this and organized a club, and there's so many reasons and so many aspects of this hobby that I think a lot of it just has to do with, getting in there, getting your feet wet and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool, the things that you get to participate in as a ham radio operator. I've had the opportunity to volunteer, both as part of, formal club efforts, but also just as an individual. And I've assisted with communications for regattas in the Charles River up in Massachusetts. And possibly the coolest thing that I got to do was actually assist with the communications team for the Boston Marathon and the events during the weekend that preceded the marathon. And realizing the role that you play as a member of that team, it's really special. You see all of these runners, some of them, running their 50th marathon, some running their first marathon, but all these people come out and they have such high hopes for that day. And, the hams are there keeping them safe, hopefully providing medical communication, providing, assistance, providing whatever information needs to travel from one place to another to make sure that everybody has a fun and safe and happy day. And it is just really cool that you get to be part of something like that, and that ham radio can, take somebody that may or may not have much experience at all with any kind of public service and make them a really useful volunteer on a bigger team.
Right, absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break real fast, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk with Douglas a little bit more about some of his favorite parts of the hobby, things that he's done, and some other information. So, stay tuned.
Hey everybody, this is Curtis. We're taking just a short break here from the regular podcast, and just got a couple of small announcements that I wanted to make. First off, as I've said many times, my wife and I have started a new blog, and this blog is talking about our journey through the foster care system, things that happened to us, how we've dealt with them, some other types of information like that, as well as some general parenting advice, things you can try yourself or whatever if you have children. So if this sounds like something that you might be interested in reading about, please check out the blog at morethansafe.com. Subscribe to the email list to get notifications on when a new post goes up. A new post will go up every Friday, around noonish, I believe. So head on over there again. That's morethansafe.com, and check that out. Also, if you would like to support this podcast, there are actually several ways that you can do it. I've talked, about a couple of them here the last few episodes, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit more. If you would like more information about it, what I want to say here, you can head on over to the support page at everythinghamradio.com/support. It has a list of all the ways that you can help support this podcast and my blog. First off, you can make a one-time donation through PayPal just by clicking on the donate button at the bottom of the show notes. You can also go to Patreon at everythinghamradio.com/Patreon and do a monthly subscription. You can subscribe for $1 a month, $5, $10, $25 a month. Totally voluntary basis. All my content will remain free. But if you subscribe at the $10 a month, you will get my podcasts early. I am going to have a couple of other things on there once I get them, t-shirts or something like that, if you subscribe at like the $25 a month level. So the last way to do it is probably the easiest. I know a bunch of people shop on Amazon, and I have a Amazon store that you can go to. It's right there on the support page. But you can also go one step further. There's instructions on that support page as well about adding my affiliate code to your bookmark. All you have to do, click on the link, resave your bookmark for Amazon, and then anything that you go into and buy from Amazon, I'll get a commission off of. There's no price change or anything that is going to affect you. So if you want to do that, that would be so awesome and such a big help. So yeah, I guess that's about it as far as the announcements goes. I did make a post here the first of the month talking a little bit about some of the changes and some of the stats and stuff like that of the podcast. So check that out if you would like. I'm going to be doing a monthly status update or something like that the first of every month. So be on the lookout for those. But anyways, let's get back to our podcast for today, okay?
And we're back with Douglas, KK4UHK. So we were talking a little bit before about things that you had already participated in. What else have you done with amateur radio? With like community service, or have you touched like digital mobile radio, or D-Star, or PSK, or anything like that? What all have you done? What all have you tried?
Yeah, so one of the coolest things that I tried was actually just this past April. I got in touch with some other guys at Harvard who were part of the Society for the Exploration of Near Space. And they said to me, we want to try launching a high-altitude balloon, but the most effective way to track one of these balloons is to set up a ham radio on it. And there's this thing called APRS. Have you ever heard of it? And as a ham radio operator, would you be able to help us with it? And my first reaction was, have I ever heard of APRS? Well, truth be told, no, I haven't. But can I help you? Absolutely. And so I reached out to some older hams who have been, fantastic Elmers to me. And I said, okay, what's the deal with this APRS? And they said, well, it's a way of tracking things. It's a digital mode. They told me a little bit about it. They told me about the APRS network. And then I just got online and I started reading, and a couple of months of collaboration and planning, and it saw us taking a day trip. We drove out to western Vermont, and we set up a radio, and using APRS, we tracked a high-altitude balloon. And, the project, it was a really cool opportunity to do something that I never would have been involved in otherwise. And even though I didn't know what APRS even was at the beginning of the project, by the end of it, I knew a decent bit about it. And I'm sure there's a lot I still have to learn. And, there's some wonderful hams who provide great information online about everything you could ever want to know about APRS. But, yeah, that's the sort of activity where you see yourself as a ham radio operator, well, what can I do with this today? Well, how about you go launch a balloon? So those are the kinds of cool projects that I've had the chance to participate in.
Wow, that really does sound awesome. We actually talked about APRS a little earlier in episode 6, so if anybody that's listening would like to go back and check that out, you can get to that real easily at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/6. That's the number 6. You can check out that episode and learn a little bit more about APRS. So Douglas, what else have you tried, like D-Star or something? I know or DMR. I know it's really big up there in the New England area.
Yeah, those things are, but I haven't actually gotten the chance to try those out yet. I'd love to. We've spent a lot of time participating in contests. The sweepstakes is a very big deal. We have a lot of fun with that within the wireless club. So I've done the sweepstakes. I've done rookie roundups. I've done 10-meter DX contests. So I have learned a lot about contesting. And then the other thing that I've had a lot of fun doing is not a particular mode of ham radio or anything, but just getting to some of the area flea markets and ham events. One of the most fun that I went to was the Nearfest event, which happens in Deerfield, New Hampshire. That's twice a year in October and April typically. And that was a really cool place to go and just meet lots and lots of people, learn about all sorts of new equipment, the latest and the greatest, and also some of, the old-time best classics. And so I'd say that it wasn't so much a chance to learn a specific new mode, but it was a chance to sort of learn about the people and about the culture of our hobby as much as anything.
So were you able to make it down to Dayton?
I was not, unfortunately. That was right as I was taking my final exams. So I'm hopeful that next year finals will get down a little bit earlier and I might be able to go. But that's my dream, like probably almost every other ham, is to get there at some point.
Yeah. It's really something. I know a good friend of mine, a fellow podcaster, Kel Nelson with Ham Radio 360, was up there this year, and he posted every day that he was there. They posted like an hour and a half long podcast episode, interviewing different people there and talking about their experience, and just from listening to all the people talking, and seeing just the live feed and the amount of people that are there and the size and stuff like that, it just boggles my mind. I've been a ham now for I think right about 21 years now, and it's it's always a dream to make it to the big one. The one that I have here, I think is like it's in the top 5. I mean, it's not the biggest, it definitely not anymore, but and it just happened a couple weeks ago, and that's HamCom, and unfortunately, I had to work, so I couldn't make it, but one of these days, hopefully next year, that's what I always tell myself. So, out of all the things that you've tried, what is the favorite part? What is your favorite part about the hobby?
Gosh, that's a hard question. It's so hard to pin down just one thing that is really, really exciting. In many ways, one of the greatest accomplishments, one of the things that I was proudest of, was after I got my general license and went and used the HF rig and just started contacting people on my own. But then, a couple days later, a brand new ham who had just gotten licensed, just joined our club, was in the shack, and I said, hey, let me show you how this works. And he had just gotten licensed too. And I think one of the coolest moments for me was the progression that I had just gotten my upgraded license, this ability to do this, and then already here I was able to pass that knowledge on and share it with, another guy, get somebody else that much further along in the hobby. So, it wasn't super rare contact, it wasn't something really, really difficult, but just feeling like I accomplished it and now I'm going to help somebody else get to that point too. That was really cool.
Yeah. There's so many things that I've seen, and I don't know if it's just a local thing here, or if it's, hobby wide or what, but the lack of Elmers that we have in this hobby is just, it's sad, really. I mean, some of the things it's like, nobody really knows about it, or maybe I just don't know the people. You mentioned you had a couple Elmers that really helped you out a lot with the APRS thing, but do you see that same trend? Do you have a hard time finding somebody that's maybe a little bit more knowledgeable than you, or that can help you with different things?
I definitely think you're right. It's definitely a problem that the way to engage a newer, younger group of ham enthusiasts is to get the people that are already really involved and excited in the hobby interested in the new people. My experience, though it may be something of an anomaly, has been nothing but positive. I'm very, very lucky to say that we have a lot of great faculty, staff, and alumni members of our club, and they've just been absolutely essential to teaching us the hobby. One in particular, I'd like to recognize our station manager, Bill Collins, W1PL. Without Bill leading and guiding me through the first couple months of being a ham, I'm not sure how long I would have really stuck with the hobby. Every time that there was some question about, how to run the equipment, or I just wasn't quite understanding the premise behind some antenna theory, Bill was an email or a phone call away, and I was really grateful for that, because having him be interested in me and interested in seeing me succeed was really a huge opportunity.
Well, that sounds really, there's a girl college student that has a vlog, and I can't remember her call sign right off the top of my head, but here recently she posted about how she has had some noticed a couple like sexist type things that she's gotten from Elmers, or having some hard time maybe getting what's the word I'm looking for, being treated as an equal. Do you see that being a young new ham? Do you see any type of thing like that?
I would say that I have been fortunate not to experience any particular instances where I felt treated as inferior or less experienced or less valued in the hobby. I think it's totally plausible that those incidents occur. I'm not personally familiar with the vlog that you mentioned from the MIT student, but that certainly sounds like a very frustrating experience. And I think it really goes without saying that it's in all of our interests to make sure that everybody, most especially the youngest and newest members of ham radio, feel welcome and engaged and involved and, equal and worthy, because, if we don't attract new people, then the hobby's not going to last for very long. So I haven't personally experienced any frustrating experiences, but, I feel for anyone that has, absolutely, and I certainly hope that, all hams can be as welcoming as possible to all other hams.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sad when I hear those stories in there, but there's always those few bad apples, and maybe they didn't intentionally do it, but they did it anyways. Because this is, for the longest time, this has been a boys' club, and now here the past 20, 25 years or something like that, there's been a lot more YLs that have joined the club, and some of the smartest hams that I know are actually females. One in particular that I grew up with got our license right about the same time. She's a broadcast engineer with Clear Air Radio or Clearwater Radio or something like that. That's a really big broadcast station organization type thing. But yeah, it's sad to hear, but I'm hoping that they're few and far between. So, one more question here before we wrap up, and Doug, I thank you very much for coming on. As a president of a young hams club, and as a young ham yourself, and fairly new ham as well, what kind of advice could you give to other clubs to help draw in the younger generation?
Absolutely. So it all focuses around one specific issue that I want to boil it down to. The way to get young people interested in ham radio is to show them that it is interesting, relevant, and exciting to their daily life. Because I think what I mean by that is that there's lots of people who are my age and of my generation that might look at this and think, radio communication, that sounds like something from, the turn of the 20th century. What does that have to do with the 21st century world where I have the internet in my pocket in a device more powerful than any radio that's ever been built? And, that's a fair question. It makes sense that people would be asking themselves that question. But my response would be, tell them about the opportunity to learn about the history of the hobby, the opportunity to participate in exciting community service events like we talked about, the opportunity to launch a high-altitude balloon project to bounce radio signals off the moon. I mean, the possibilities of ham radio are really quite limitless, and as you were mentioning earlier, there has really been a great, and I think it's just fantastic, push towards all sorts of new digital modes and technological innovations in ham radio. And I really think that the key is telling young people technology has a place in ham radio, and you can come into ham radio and make it what you want. So it doesn't have to be the hobby that your great-grandfather participated in 100 years ago. It can be the new cutting-edge hobby that you participate in today. And I really think that if you answer that question and satisfy that concern, I think that we'll see a lot of young people with ham clubs regaining membership numbers and hopefully expanding and even spawning off new clubs in the future.
Wow. What an answer. You really hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's, we as old hams, and I say old in a loose thing, I'm only 36, so I'm not going to go too old, but, us as old hams, we've kind of lost sight of maybe what the newer generation is. And, I mean, we really just, okay, and I'm talking to all of y'all, not just Doug here. I'm talking to all of us, all of y'all listeners, all of your friends that you're going to share this with. We really need to buckle down, learn some of this new technology, and understand it, and be able to teach it in a way that we can attract the younger generations to come into the hobby. Because if the young people don't come into the hobby, then, is amateur radio going to die? Is it going to go to the wayside when the older hams, unfortunately, pass away and stuff. No, we need to struggle. We need to fight. Get this younger generation like Doug and like so many other people that I know, and continue to grow our numbers, continue to grow that younger generation of new hams so they can carry us on to the next century. So, Doug, thank you so very much for coming onto the show with us and talking to us about the youth in amateur radio. And is there any shout-outs or anybody you want to say hello to before we close for this segment?
Well, I already recognized our fantastic station manager, Bill Collins, W1PL. I should also thank my partner in crime, Sahil Mehta, KG5HEW. He's the vice president of our club, and everything that I've been able to achieve in my leadership of the Wireless Club would not have been possible without both of their fantastic help. So my best wishes to both of them, and Curtis, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast today.
Absolutely, Doug. If you want to know more about the Harvard Wireless Club, the HWC, check out the Amateur Radio Club Spotlight that we have coming up pretty soon. Check out the show notes for a link to their website and more information on them, more information about the things we've talked about today. And thanks again, and stay tuned for the Amateur Radio Club Spotlight, where we will be talking further with Doug about the Harvard Wireless Club. So, stick around. And we're back. This episode, we are talking about the Harvard Wireless Club, and we're doing something new this episode. This is the first episode, really, that we're having a guest interviewer on the podcast, as well as this is a first time for the Amateur Radio Club Spotlight. This idea was actually provided by one of my listeners, and I believe his name was Mark. Let me see if I can look this up real fast. Mark Wardell. He's actually a longtime listener and a contributor on Patreon for me. He gave me this idea, and I loved it so much, and Doug is thankful enough to help me run with it, help me start it out, help me work out the kinks, which we have definitely had quite a bit of this episode. So, Doug, tell us a little bit about your club, and we'll go from there.
Okay, absolutely. So, the Harvard Wireless Club is one of the oldest amateur radio clubs, college-based amateur radio clubs in the country. We believe that the club was originally founded as the Harvard Radio Society in 1909. That means if you hear us contesting and the check is 09er, that's 1909er, not 2009. We get some questions about that. So we've been around for a really long time, and as a result of all that age, the club has seen some really pretty cool elements of history. The Secretary of Commerce was Herbert Hoover when one of our first licenses was actually issued to the club. So we have a document that bears Hoover's signature authorizing our club. Another fun fact about the Wireless Club is today our call sign is Whiskey 1 Alpha Foxtrot, but we were actually originally just 1 Alpha Foxtrot because we predate the FCC and its assignment protocols for modern call signs. So that's kind of another cool fact. What else can I tell you? The club has been fairly active its entire life. There were not too many members during World War II, and then also during a period in the early 2000s, the club was relatively speaking mothballed. But we are very grateful and lucky that the club is alive and well today with its own facilities right in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at the heart of Harvard's campus, just off of Mass Ave.
Wow, that is a massive history. I can say that my club has been around since 1995, but to say it 1909, wow, that's a long time. So, what is y'all's website address? How can people find your club and get more information if they want to?
Yes, absolutely. So, please, by all means, go ahead and check out our website. It's w1af.harvard.edu. We have information about our meetings, about activities, about various events, and lots of stuff about the club's history. You can see some photos of our setup as well. You're also more than welcome to send us an email if you want to, and the email address is just w1af@harvard.edu. So that's just our call sign at harvard.edu. Really easy. Send us an email. Me or someone else affiliated with the club will get right back to you. And if you're particularly interested, we also have a Facebook group. It's just the Harvard Wireless Club on Facebook, and you can check out some of our, more casual postings about activities there.
Awesome. And if y'all missed the website address there or the Facebook address, then we will have links to it in the show notes. So no fret, just head on over to the show notes for this episode at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/26. What about repeaters or net activities or anything like that? Do y'all have repeaters that are owned by the club?
So the Harvard Wireless Club does not own its own repeater outright, but we are very, very fortunate to have a partnership with MIT Radio Society and Repeater Association. And there is a repeater that's located over at MIT, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. Its call sign is Whiskey 1 X-Ray Mike, and the frequency is 449er725. And our PL tone on that is 114.8. I'm sure Curtis will put all that in the description in case you missed any of it. But so that's a repeater that the MIT Radio Society manages, but Harvard works very closely with MIT, and that repeater, I've seen it be used for volunteer events, for talk-ins for various flea markets. I've used it just to communicate with friends of mine down the river at MIT various evenings. So that's definitely a cool repeater to check out. And then, as I said, also our friends over at MIT, great group of people over there. So highly recommend you get in touch with them, as well as us if you're looking for a alive and well youth amateur radio club. And then as for nets, you asked about that. Oh, sorry. As for nets, you asked about that too. We don't run any ourselves, but we are always interested in hearing about other people's nets. And I've recently been in touch with some gentlemen down at Yale who are working on trying to revive W1YU. It's currently somewhat mothballed, but they're doing great things to bring it back to life in a proper form. And we've been talking about forming some sort of a New England school net. So stay tuned. There may be news about that come September or October.
Now that would be really cool. I've never really looked at how close you are between those three. So, I mean, yeah, you're in Harvard, and you said you're just down the river from MIT. How far are you away from Yale?
Yeah, so it's not even that far. It's about a 2.5-hour drive. So there's a lot of transit between Harvard and Yale. We're great rivals, but we're also the best of friends. The two schools operate very similarly, and so there's a lot of chance for us to do great things together. And as I said, the fact that the Yale Radio Club is really making a big effort to come back to life right now, I'm really excited about that. And we at the Harvard Wireless Club are doing everything we can to help the Yale Club regain its college recognition and get a station back up and off the ground.
So, being that far away, I mean, what are y'all talking about as far as the net goes? Like using Echolink or D-Star or something, or what?
We were talking about Echolink, and I should warn you, this is only in the very most preliminary of plans right now, but I have a little bit of experience using Echolink myself. I haven't hosted it before, but I have used it when other people have sort of set everything up, and I had great experience with that. The convenience of having an app right on my smartphone was a really big bonus. So definitely looking at that as a possibility. I'm not terribly familiar with D-Star, but interested to learn more, which is what I would say about just about anything ham-related.
Well, Doug, let me ask you this. Just a little side note here. Do you ever listen to the Ham Radio 360 podcast?
I have not listened to too many of them before, but hearing you speak about it and learning about everything, I'm really looking forward to getting into some more podcasts now, and now that I know that these things are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely check them out. They just actually released a brand new podcast series that is more geared towards building stuff and the actual the actual building stuff part of the hobby. It just started this last Tuesday, and it's hosted by Jeremy, which I believe lives in Ohio, and George, which lives out in California in the Bay Area. I believe I got that right. But anyways, I believe it's George. I'll have to correct you. I'll send you an email later on. They have a big network. It's called Baynet, and they have D-Star, they have Echolink, they have IRLP, they have Yaesu System Fusion. They have all that in this thing. So I need to get you hooked up with him, and he can kind of mentor you a little bit, maybe, or at least you can ask him to about something like that, IRLP or Echolink or something like that to do that. So he would be a really good resource for you.
That sounds fantastic. Yes, definitely connect us. I'd really appreciate that. One other thing I wanted to mention a little bit about this upcoming collaboration with the clubs is anyone that is familiar with OneLand will know that the annual ARRL New England convention takes place in Boxborough, Massachusetts. And no promises about anything yet, but I have been in contact with members of several other radio societies and clubs in the New England area, and we are hoping to get together a group of panelists, I might be part of that myself actually, to talk about the history of various New England amateur radio school-related clubs, as well as the future of those clubs. So anyone from OneLand, definitely think about Boxborough. It should be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That is really awesome. So real quick before we leave, we've got about 3 more minutes here before my recording stops. What kind of activities do y'all do as a club?
Absolutely. So one of the most important things for the Harvard Wireless Club is our commitment to community service, whether that's volunteering to help with the Boston Marathon, whether that is providing communications for the local regatta, or even just, letting people know that if something were to fail, if all else, falls apart, we have a backup system, we've got batteries, we have a way of communicating when just about no one else does. So community service, being a part of our community, letting everybody at Harvard know that we are a resource that they can turn to, that's important to our mission. In terms of the sort of the fun and game side of the hobby, we love to contest. You'll hear us participating in school roundups. We'll have new members doing rookie roundups. The sweepstakes the ARL sweepstakes is a big deal to us in November. And beyond all those things, we love to just get a group of guys and girls. We're very fortunate to have a handful of female members, but it's great to get a group of guys and girls to various ham fests and flea markets just in the area. And my philosophy is just that anytime a group of people get together for the purpose of ham, or where ham radio is the uniting factor, it's a good day. So flea market, contest, volunteerism, whatever it might be, we want to bring together young people that are interested in the hobby.
That's awesome. And I will correct you here. In the amateur radio world, the females are called young ladies, or YLs. So this is probably one of the few times that you're actually going to be called an old man, because that's what you are in amateur radio. You're an OM, and the females are YL. So get used to that.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. And I know I've been told that more than once, but that's one thing. The ham radio, there's a lot of the lingo and a lot of things to remember. So I'm just glad that I can remember our alphabet. That's a good place to start, at least, I guess.
There you go. Well, Doug, thank you again so very much for coming on the episode. And people, check out their website, support the club, and y'all have done an awesome job. Real quickly, one more quick question before we leave. How many members do y'all have right now?
So we are in a period of expansion. We're really proud to say that we have just around about a dozen active undergraduate members. And that's not the world's biggest number, but compared to the state of a lot of other clubs at the moment, we're really proud of that number. The sort of the minimum at Harvard to have official recognition as a club is about 10 undergraduate members. So the fact that we have a little bit north of that is really good. When you add in all of our graduate students, staff, faculty, and then active alumni participants, and also just members of the community, there's, another good dozen, maybe a little bit more, who are fairly active, people that I know, people that I've talked to as part of the club. Our email list goes out to about twice that many people who may not be local anymore to the club, but are definitely interested in hearing about us. So
awesome.
The numbers aren't huge, but they're big enough for us to have a great time.
Great. Well, Doug, thanks again for coming on, and hope to hear comments about this episode from you and from the rest of your club.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for featuring us in the spotlight. On behalf of everybody at the Harvard Wireless Club, we really appreciate your interest in us, and to everyone who's going to be listening, please reach out to us, ask us questions, ask us about getting involved. If you are in the New England area and you'd like a station tour, I'm more than happy to arrange that. We've got some pretty cool antennas up on the roof, and we're very centrally located right to Harvard Square. So by all means, be in contact with us, and we really look forward to meeting everyone that we hear from. So thanks again for your interest in our club.
Absolutely, Doug. 73 to you, and until next time, have a good.
All right, 73. Thanks again, Curtis. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Once again, I'd like to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Again, you can find additional information, all the links that we talked about today, as well as some other information on the show notes of today's episode at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/26. That's number 26. If you'd like to receive emails on when I publish a new podcast or a new blog post, you can sign up at the bottom of the show notes. There's a couple little boxes there you need to fill out. Click enter or click on submit or sign me up or whatever the little button says below it, and then click on the link in the email that you receive, and you'll be added to our email list. Also, please follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio and on Twitter at K5CLM. I'm also on a couple other social media platforms, not really all that active in it though, but you can find links to those under social on the menu bar at the top of the page. If you like what you hear here and you want to support this podcast in any way, monetarily, just well wishes or whatever, you can head on over to everythinghamradio.com/support, and that will give you some options to help support this podcast. So thanks again, everybody, and I will see you next time. This is K5CLM signing out. 73, y'all.